All right, the next definition for the day is going to be amendment. I know you've heard this word before since you just had civics last year. So the root word of amendment is mend or to fix, okay? All right, so it's a change to the Constitution. Our founding fathers made sure that we could change our document that governs our society. It has to be very slow to change usually, and it's very hard to change it. So that way we're not just changing it all the time. So the Constitution of the United States is the longest existing, that means it's still in use, government document right now, okay? So we have over 20, well over 20, amendments to the Constitution. And we're gonna be discussing all of them that took place after 1865, which is when this class began. All right, so an amendment is a change to the Constitution. Now the next three are all related, okay? You've probably heard of all three of these terms before. You probably know all three of these terms already. Very simple. Rural, far outside the city, or countryside, okay? So an example, Lafayette, Louisiana is not rural, okay? Lafayette, Louisiana is urban, in the city, okay? So Church Point, it's kind of in between. So that would kind of make it suburban, okay? It's kind of a city, kind of not. However, Richard, Louisiana would be definitely rural, okay? So rural is the country, okay? Urban, in the city. Suburban, in between, okay? All right, Monopoly. You've probably heard of the game before, right? What's the point of the game Monopoly? It's to control the entire board, to own everything, okay? So the word monopoly is when one business or person gains nearly complete control of a good or service in an industry. For instance, John D. Rockefeller, okay? John D. Rockefeller grew up in the 1800s, and by the end of the 1800s and the early 1900s, he owned 95% of oil and gas in this country. He owned or controlled it. We'll get into that in a later chapter. How he did that. Okay, I'll teach you exactly how he did that. But if you own the entire industry, if you own all oil and gas, and you have a monopoly in that technology, in that field, then you get to charge whatever you want. John D. Rockefeller became the richest American that ever lived, okay? By creating monopolies. All right, precedent, okay? Root word is precede, like as in before. So, it's a traditional rule that others follow. Now, my example for precedent is George Washington. He set a lot of precedents as our first president, okay? Because he was the first president, everything he did was a precedent, pretty much. Nobody else had done it before him. One of Washington's biggest precedents that all other presidents actually followed, even though it was not written in the Constitution, was that after Washington's second four-year term as president of the United States, he stepped down as president. He said no man should become king of America. Now, that rule was followed for over a century until a man called Franklin Delano Roosevelt became the only president to successfully run and win for 4 terms as president of the United States. But it wasn't in the Constitution. Nothing in the Constitution said that Franklin Roosevelt couldn't do it. All these other presidents had simply followed Washington's precedent. But after Franklin Roosevelt got 4 terms in office, we decided to do an amendment to the Constitution. And this amendment says that a president cannot have more than 2 terms. And thus, it's solidified in an amendment, it has solidified Washington's precedent. Okay, let's move on. Bureaucrat. All right, any non-elected, non-military government worker. So, it's a checklist, okay? if you meet this checklist, you're a bureaucrat. So let's look at it. What's an example of a bureaucrat? Am I a bureaucrat? Let's follow it. Did I get elected to be a teacher? No. Am I military? No. Am I a government worker? Yeah. Okay. So am I a non-elected, non-military government worker? Yes, I am a bureaucrat. Okay, let's do another example. President Trump. Is he a bureaucrat? Well, let's start with the checklist. Non-elected. He's not a bureaucrat, right? He doesn't meet the definition from the first one. Is President Trump military? No. Although he is the commander-in-chief of the military. Is he a government worker? Yes, he is the president. President Trump would be a politician, okay? Even though president is his first job in politics. So, all right, we're gonna move on to the next one, okay? Dark horse. Now, a dark horse is a politician that nobody thinks is gonna win, okay? So a politician that most people do not think will win his or her party's nomination for an elected office, okay? So the reason why they call it dark horse is because if you can imagine a horse race, this is a horse that is so far behind in the race that nobody can even really see them. Nobody's paying attention to them, and nobody thinks they're going to win. Occasionally, in politics, a dark horse candidate will win. Most of the time, dark horse candidates, you don't even know who they are, okay? You never hear their names. They don't even make it to the stage of the debates. So, but occasionally, they will pull off an upset and win the party's nomination and maybe even the presidency or the governorship or whatever, you know. All right, pork. Pork is wasteful spending to benefit a politician's election district. So pork is dumb government spending. Government spending that makes no sense, and the only purpose of this system is to make politicians and their friends rich and to get politicians reelected. So, for example, okay, Huey P. Long was one of our state's governors, okay, probably the most famous one. And he actually, during the Great Depression, got money from Franklin Roosevelt in order to build a bridge. This bridge is called the Sunshine Bridge, and it put thousands of Louisiana workers to work. Well, guess what? Those people that got that job from Huey Long, when the next election came up, guess who they voted for? They voted for him because he got them a job. That's an example of pork. By the way, the name of this bridge is the Sunshine Bridge. They called it that because that's the only thing for years that ever traveled on that bridge. The Sunshine Bridge had no road going to it and no road leading away from it. It was a bridge in the middle of nothing. Now today that bridge still exists, but today it actually is in use. It has a road on each side. So anyway, there's several other examples of pork that I can tell you. I'll get into that later on in the chapters, but pork is wasteful government spending, okay?